there's one thing people tend to complain about the 50 Fathoms is that it's too big. And it's a similar case with the Air Command. You know, it's at 42.5 millimeters. Everyone wishes that was smaller. Now there's a 36 millimeter version. It'd be nice if there was something in the middle. Hi everyone and welcome to Shah Lusso, and yes, today we are talking about the Blancpain 50 Fathoms Air Command. Yes, that's correct. It is actually part of the 50 Fathoms line, despite the fact that you might think it's a separate line, especially if you look at Blancpain's current website. To give a bit of context, of course, we need to look back at the history of the watch. So the Air Command was a product of the 1950s, originally actually designed for the US Air Force. What they wanted was something like the 50 Fathoms, however, an air equivalent. And that's how the Air Command was born. It was a flyback chronograph. There are very few examples of the original, and that is of course the one that the inspiration is taken for with the 2019 version that they released, as well as the now smaller 36 millimeter version released in 2022. But in between the 1950s and the new 21st century versions, there was one version of the Air Command that often goes overlooked. And somewhat unfairly in my view, because it was, for one thing, a much more original design, it was forward thinking, and it was extremely versatile. And that is the Blancpain 50 Fathoms Air Command, which was released as part of the Trilogy. And this was the comeback for the 50 Fathoms. So it was released in 3 different variants. You had the regular 50 Fathoms, you had the GMT, and of course you had the Air Command, which incorporated a rotating bezel as well as a flyback chronograph with the water resistance of a 50 Fathoms. In this case, it was reduced to only 200 meters versus 300, which is traditional for the 50 Fathoms, but with the same case, and with that amazing bracelet as well. And to give a bit of context, while the modern 50 Fathoms measures in at 45 millimeters, the bathyscaphe at 43.5, the modern Air Command at 42.5, this one slots in at that perfect sweet spot, which is 40 millimeters. Just like the mil-spec variants, just like the Rolex Daytona, and so many other iconic watches that fall into that perfect sweet spot that is, 39 to about 41 millimeters. You can't really go wrong with that size. And you can tell that as soon as you put it on the wrist. It doesn't look too big or overbearing. At the same time, by having those chronograph pushers there, as well as the screw downs, it still has a decent amount of presence on the wrist to make sure its presence is known. But on the other hand, it's balanced out by having that metal bezel, which means that the dial doesn't look overly big or any bigger. For example, when you compare it to something that might have a ceramic, or in the case of a regular 50 Fathoms, that sapphire insert. On the inside, you have a Frederic Piguet F185, and it provides the 40-hour power reserve, vertical clutch and column wheel, and of course a flyback chronograph. Interestingly, this movement is still actually in production, and there are still derivatives of it in production as well, which means that this is actually a great option because it's not like it's using some antiquated movement that'll be harder to service. It's still very similar to a lot of recent Blancpain chronographs, and of course the 185 is descended from the Piguet 1185, which was used in tons of high-end chronographs throughout the 90s and 2000s. But the real appeal of this watch, of course, isn't just its great fit or its movement. It's the fact that this is a very unique time in Blancpain's history. It was part of its resurgence. They were already resuscitated in 1982 by Jean-Claude Piguet, but this is what really brought back the 50 Fathoms, was this trilogy of that regular 50 Fathoms, the Air Command, and the GMT. All of them in 40 millimeters, all of them with a similar design language, all of them forward-thinking, for once, from a brand that celebrated that it was one of the oldest names in the business. And from a brand that currently, all of its models are looking to the past. Admittedly, that's of course good business practice and they're very good-looking models, but this shows what they could have done if they kept looking forward. And it was a great example of a great all-arounder. I mean, in modern times, you don't really have an equivalent of that, especially for the price that you can get one of these for. So on the pre-owned market, they tend to go for between 6 to about 10,000 US, depending on condition and depending especially on whether it has box and papers. Really, what modern competitor does it have? Daytonas, of course, will go for 3-4 times that. Something like the Black Bay Chrono, at retail, it'll be pretty similar, about 5,200. So for a little bit more, you can probably snag one of these. On paper, it might be very similar, 200 meter water resistance, great chronograph. However, it's also 1.5 millimeters thicker, so the wear is completely different on the wrist. Something like a Moonwatch will be manual wind, similar thickness, but bigger on the wrist, 42 millimeters. And also that's with only 50 meters of water resistance. This has 4 times that. It really doesn't have a modern equivalent, and that I think is one of the best things about this watch. However, it's very, very difficult to find, and that's where today's sponsor, Chronext, comes in. Chronext has a huge range of watches, especially some of these really unique pieces that are difficult to find, that are made in small amounts, and really that are only available on the pre-owned market. So make sure you check the links in the description below and use the discount code Lusso if you find a rare piece that you've been looking for and want a little bit of a discount on it. But bringing it back to the 50 Fathoms, I think at the end of the day, this is a great example of what Blancpain could do. While I love the current range, I love the current Air Command as well as the current 50 Fathoms, I love the bathyscaphe as well. At the end of the day, they're all looking towards the past, which is what so many other watchmakers are doing, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's difficult for Blancpain to really get out of their shell, to really stand apart. They have so much history, it would be great if they could have a parallel line looking to the future. And that I think is what Piguet originally envisioned with this trilogy. A celebration of the past, coming into the future, and looking forward to something new for the company. But let me know in the comments below, what do you think of the 50 Fathoms Air Command? Would you get this over the current version? Would you get this over something like a Moonwatch or a Black Bay Chrono? Would you go that extra step to get something more unique? Or would you go with what is tried and true? I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below. And of course, if you like this video, make sure you like it and share it. If you want to see more pictures and infographics as seen throughout this and all my other videos, make sure you follow me on Instagram at Lusso. If you want to see more videos of watches, then make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell as well so you know when the next video comes out. In any case, thanks for watching this video, and we'll catch you on the next one.